Hey y'all, I'm getting ready for a big trip, several months this spring and summer, and I'm thinking about something to do as a hobby or an interest on the road. Something that doesn't involve being on a device. This has been an ongoing treasure hunt for me to find something that is genuinely interesting to me, easy to bring along in a small vehicle, and doesn't take up a lot of room. So I've been yearning since I left my sticks and bricks living for a way to have creative expression be a portable process. How can I gain the benefits from that process in different ways from being in sticks and bricks, where I had more room, where I was in one place where I could get supplies. It's very different on the road, obviously, and for the first year and a half was constantly having that question in the back of my mind. Being on the road, being outside, benefiting from the interaction and relationship with Mama Nature has been outstanding, ecstatic. Can't imagine my life without it now. And there are trade-offs when you downsize from something larger than a vehicle to whatever rig you find yourself in. You have to make compromises about what you can take with you and what you have to leave behind. When I did end up getting out on the road, the timing was unexpected and my creativity was expressing itself in lots of different ways. I'd been teaching a class about how to use a bullet journal, or what I called an organizational journal, to help you decide how you're going to spend your retirement if you were clueless in that regard. I had begun during the lockdowns to experiment with watercolor, paper, and mixed media collage. And I've had this ongoing love affair with deep, saturated jewel tones, regardless of how they showed up, whether it was beads, paint, clothing, photographs in magazines, it didn't matter. This kind of color just grabbed me and doesn't let me go. So this past week I was in a Tuesday morning store and walked through the crafty aisle, and there was a coloring book for adults that contained those jewel tones on the cover. And inside, the designs that the creator chose also tickled my brain's funny bone around line and pattern. There was this epiphany about creativity, and now's the time to really pursue this. Why? I don't know. But having these ideas in the back of my head for the last year and a half and wondering how to execute on them, apparently now's the time. Where those jewel tones ended up showing up was quite a surprise, and I'm still experimenting with this new medium of expression, and I'll show you what that looks like. And yes, there are lots of ways to express creativity, either with the glasses that you choose, the meals that you cook, how you organize your rig, whether it's build or no build, what you choose to include in your environment in terms of color or decoration. But I missed getting my hands in something, whether it was holding a paintbrush or a pen, ripping paper, taping, gluing, just getting in there and getting messy. In addition to that foray into the Tuesday morning store, in the algorithm on my YouTube feed, I suddenly started getting these videos of artists that I've watched in the past, but haven't for quite some time. So that was also a surprise nudge to check into these things again and maybe rethink, do I really have to give this stuff up inside a small space? And sometimes just being open, willing to consider a possibility is what makes those things happen. After that encounter with the jewel tone covered coloring book, within the next few days, I had an encounter with another set of jewel tones. That color has, I don't want to say plagued me, inspired, dogged me, followed me around my entire life. And for it to show up in a package of heat shrink connectors in that pattern just blew me away. And of course it didn't take long for my inner critic to show up and say, well, what are you going to do with this? Is it going to be worth your time? Are you going to sell stuff? What? And our inner critics just want to keep us safe, so I let it rant for a little while and then just kind of patted its head and thanked it for its service and said, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm still not really sure what it is, but I'm just going to continue following this breadcrumb trail of how I feel in my body when I encounter these articles and items and mediums and see what happens. In my experience, that's always been the most fun and the most rewarding, even if it can be the most unnerving process. It's just part of being human. So if this helps somebody else who's on the road and trying to figure out how to foster their creativity and benefit from that while they're on the road, I'm willing to document my fits and starts and awkwardness and whatever else is part of this process. I'm reminded of, I believe, a TED Talk where an artist who previously had full control over his body and his artistic process slowly over time became constrained by the shakes his body was developing. And rather than just give up and decide that he could no longer create art, he embraced that shaking, and that became a central component of the art that he continues to create. And I'm looking at the constraints, quote unquote, of living in a small space while you're inside a vehicle as a mother of invention of sorts. People have been creating art for millennia with whatever was around them at the time. Luckily, some of it we still have after tens or hundreds or millions of years. So it can be done. I'm going to allow myself to follow the impulses that I'm given and see what happens. Starting with what you already have is a great nomad tenet, and I had just purchased this journal to document this spring and summer extravaganza. And when I downsized from my sticks and bricks and all of my mixed media materials, this is what I ended up bringing with me. Stencils and pieces of paper and images that I'd clipped from art journals. I jumped in and chose some images to put onto the cover. This is a great medium to put over and under images because nothing smears. The pages of the journal were fairly thin, so I glued two together at a time to give some more substance to what is turning out to be art journal pages. I did a little bit of this kind of thing in Sticks and Bricks, but this will be the first time that I've dedicated a journal to combining written word and basically background blank canvases for whatever tickles your fancy. Best thing about art journaling is you are only limited by your imagination. I had purchased this roll of jute canvas, and see those jewel tones showing up again at a thrift store, thinking I was going to do some type of weaving. So here's my first iteration with the heat shrink connectors. They're hanging from my ceiling. I'm not moving right now, so I have to simulate what it looks like on the road. There's something about this shimmying movement that really has me mesmerized. The fabric on my ceiling does not play well with Velcro, so I came up with another way to attach items that is easy on and easy off. Another surprising source of jewel tone goodness are these wire Pharrells that come in different sizes. In keeping with the shimmy theme, I got some copper colored wire and beads and started making these charms for my fairy lights. Well, I've got a good foundation going, so we'll see what happens, and I'll let you know.